In our village, girls with abundant vitality are chosen as stake brides. My mother said stake brides receive generous dowries when they marry, hence the name. However, later I learned that stake brides are used to drive the stake for the village bridal chamber. The bridal chamber rises high above the red soil, constructed with the blood of stake brides, who are nailed to the ground beneath. Sleeping in the bridal chamber is believed to bring fertility. It is a custom in our village. When my elder brother and his wife slept in the bridal chamber, the stake bride Xiao Juan disappeared. The village elders said this was a grave taboo, and only a blood relative could serve as the stake bride to dispel the calamity. My mother and brother rushed into the delivery room upon hearing the baby's cries. At first glance, their faces fell. What's going on? Why is it a girl? My brother impatiently handed the newborn to my mother and complained, Mom, didn't you say that sleeping in the bridal chamber guarantees a boy? My sister-in-law, still weak from childbirth, defiantly took the daughter and cherished her. Kiang, what do you mean? A daughter is also our child, and our village emphasizes gender equality. Maybe our daughter will be beautiful and become a stake bride. My brother, with a stern face, retorted, You don't understand. The stake bride. Before he could finish, my mother glanced at me and immediately slapped his arm, interrupting him. Wrong. Don't worry, whether it's a boy or a girl. It's equally good. It's just that you two slept in the bridal chamber, and Akiang is worried about complications. Sleeping in the bridal chamber brings prosperity to the land. The bridal chamber hovers above the village, surrounded by wild grass and trees. Only under the bridal chamber does no grass grow, and even the soil is red. The village regards this as a blessing. Wives usually marry into other villages and leave from here to bring blessings. Couples wishing for a son only need to stay here for 10 days to conceive a male child. My sister-in-law, in her first pregnancy, was paid by my mother to sleep in the bridal chamber with my brother. However, she gave birth to a girl. Our village doesn't discriminate between boys and girls. However, due to financial difficulties after my father's death, my brother and mother decided to have a son first, thinking they could raise him more ruggedly, sparing the hardships for their daughter. My sister-in-law agreed, and they entered the bridal chamber. In the village, when a girl reaches puberty, she must be taken to Rongpa's house to be selected as a stake bride. Only with a stake bride can a couple enter the bridal chamber. Being frail since birth, I worried my mother when I didn't menstruate at 14. She sighed, thinking I would be selected. My cousin Xiao Juan became a stake bride at the age of 10, supported like a treasure by her father and uncle. Seeing my concern, Xiao Juan secretly gave me nourishing herbs. When I finally menstruated, I went to Rongpa's house to participate. However, she shook her head, saying my blood and energy were too weak, and my face was pale yellow. I couldn't become a stake bride. I envied Xiao Juan, who didn't have to work in the fields, and could enjoy delicacies like pig liver soup and red dates with longan. As an ordinary girl, I toiled day and night in our gender-equal village. Xiao Juan was my brother's stake bride before he entered the bridal chamber. By then, she had been nourished to a rosy complexion. When she married, my brother also entered the bridal chamber. Everything went smoothly. But my brother didn't have a son. My mother couldn't accept it, so she took the newborn girl to Rongpo, demanding an explanation. Soon after, my mother and brother returned empty-handed, leaving the girl with Rongpo. My mother was delighted and urged my sister-in-law to recover quickly. That night, everyone went to bed early. The next morning, before dawn, I heard the adults in the courtyard speaking in hushed tones. I woke up confused, only catching snippets like stake bride is missing. I immediately became alert. Stake brides usually marry into other villages, and there were cases of brides hiding to avoid distant marriages, thinking someone who found the missing stake bride would be greatly rewarded. I eagerly volunteered. My family was poor, and I hadn't tasted anything delicious since Xiao Huan left. I burst out of the door and shouted to my mother, Mom, they'll find her. Sure I can. I was familiar with the terrain from shepherding, and stake brides, being pampered, couldn't hide too far away. They were likely just afraid of marriage. Grandpa's son and my mother seemed unprepared for my awakening, appearing somewhat panicked and scared. My mother, holding a steaming sweet potato from the pot, said with a smile, Yanyan must be half asleep. We didn't lose anything. Listen, go shepherd the sheep. Come back, and Mom will make something delicious for you. I rubbed my eyes, not playing along. Maybe it was just a dream. Little did I know that the missing stake bride they were talking about wasn't a new bride, who hadn't married yet, but Xiao Huan, who had married long ago. That day, I drove the flock further and further, crossing several hills. Under the scorching sun, I found a shady place to rest and unexpectedly discovered a cave hidden by grass and branches. Curious, I pushed aside the obstacles and peered into the cave. As I moved, the cave made rustling sounds, and a strange creature, naked and with disheveled hair, crawled towards the entrance, more like slithering than walking, her knees adorned with large flesh lumps on both sides, her eyes dark and sunken, resembling two large sheep dung balls pressed into her face, eerily peculiar, terrified. I peered closer, and as she approached, the cave became filled with the rustling of movement. The creature, now outside the cave, suddenly exploded with vigor and threw herself at me, with stones in hand, more agitated than before. What's wrong, Xiao Juan? I said, alarmed by her actions. She couldn't speak, and I was anxious. In the next moment, she exerted an unexpected force, violently pushing me away. With stones raised, she threw them at me, more emotional than before. What's wrong, Xiao Juan? I repeated, unable to understand her actions. She couldn't speak, and I was desperate. I kept a certain distance from her. As she groped around on the ground, I immediately understood that she wanted to find a stick to write something down. I quickly picked up a tree branch, and placed it in her hands. Xiao Juan, do you have something to tell me? She nodded and began drawing on the ground. In that moment, it felt like time had turned back to the past when Xiao Juan was still a stake bride. She used to study and read books, and in her free time, she would come to the fields to find me, teaching me to draw and recognize characters on the ground with sticks. I never learned to read, not even the simplest characters. In the end, we would just play a guessing game in the fields. No matter what Xiao Juan drew, I could guess it correctly. She praised my cleverness, saying I would be even smarter if I went to school. I praised her for drawing lifelike pictures that didn't need my guessing. Her family's big yellow dog would lie beside us, and we would often praise each other, laughing together in harmony. Those were truly happy times. But now, as I looked at the twisted drawings on the ground, a chill ran down my spine. Xiao Juan was blind, her eyes couldn't see, and her hands seemed useless. She could only manage to move them with difficulty while holding a stick, although it was difficult to discern. I quickly understood what she was trying to convey. Looking at the drawings on the ground, my blood froze, and a chill climbed up my spine. I shivered, covering my mouth, tears streaming down my face as I looked at Xiao Juan, now in a pitiful state. Seeing my silence, she impatiently made mournful sounds, waving her arms in the air to find my position. Xiao Juan, is this true? I asked with a trembling voice. She let out a painful moan, slapping the drawing on the ground, urging me to read it. I hesitated, lifting her blood-stained hand, and finally spoke. Are you saying that Sun Grandpa and Rome Po nailed you under the bridal chamber, intending for you to bleed to death and nourish the red soil beneath the bridal chamber? Even though she couldn't shed tears, I knew she was crying. She nodded heavily in response, seemingly recalling the dreadful memories. According to Xiao Wan's drawings, she was saved by the big yellow dog. The day my brother and sister-in-law entered the bridal chamber was also her wedding day, the day when a stake bride, having her tongue cut off and eyes blinded, was nailed to a stake under the bridal chamber, and then buried alive, to ensure that the stake bride wouldn't die immediately and would continue bleeding. Her mouth, nose, and wounds would be left exposed. That day, Xiao Juan thought she was going to die, but the big yellow dog miraculously dug her out from the ground, biting through the ropes on Xiao Wan's body. The dog had to sacrifice its own life. Xiao Juan, with her mutilated hands, managed to pull out the remaining nails, and crawl out of the village. She didn't know where she fainted, but when she woke up, she was already in this cave. She was saved by a wild person, who used herbs to treat her for 3 months. She barely survived, and I choked back tears as I translated her drawings. I couldn't believe it was all true, and I couldn't believe that Rome Po and Sun Grandpa were responsible for it. Xiao Juan, what should I do now? My sister-in-law gave birth to a girl, and my mom said Rome Po wants my brother and sister-in-law to enter the bridal chamber again. I dare not think about it. I dare not think. I cried while holding Xiao Juan, and she trembled in my arms, making sorrowful sounds. For her safety, I decided to leave Xiao Juan in the cave. According to her, the wild person had left days ago. I promised to visit her while shepherding and bring some food. I wasn't a stake bride, so I wasn't in immediate danger, but I had to go back to the village, unravel the truth, and find out what my mom knew. I believed she would help me. However, I didn't expect that my mom was no different from Sun Grandpa. I returned home in a daze, planning to tell my mom about the horrifying incident, but she and my brother were not at home. I felt disoriented and started to doubt Xiao Wan's words. Could it be that she had gone insane from her severe injuries? Was all of this just her hallucination? As I pondered this, I rushed into my sister-in-law's room. She was taking supplements, and upon seeing my agitated state, she laughed. Yanyan, are you craving something again? She scooped out half a bowl of fish soup for me, saying, our village is great. I gave birth to a girl, and your mom made soup for me. Yanyan, you don't know, it's like a dream in our village. Drinking the fish soup, memories of Xiao Juan saying similar things in the past flooded my mind, leaving me melancholic. I hesitated to speak but eventually asked, sister-in-law, did you hear any strange noises, or see anything unusual on the day you and my brother entered the bridal chamber? She seemed to carefully recall, blushing, There was nothing near the bridal chamber. What kind of sounds could there be? Really? You didn't hear anything unusual that day? I felt a glimmer of relief. Perhaps Xiao Juan was indeed crazy. Yanyan, where's my brother and your mom? They went to Rongpa's house. Rongpo had something to discuss with them. I decided to go find my mom immediately and have her tell Sun Grandpa to rescue Xiao Juan. But just as I reached the front door, my mom and brother returned. I could hear their voices getting closer. My brother said, "Do you really want Yanyan to be a stake bride? Mom, can you bear that? After raising her for so many years, it's time for her to contribute to the family." Didn't you hear what Rongpo said? Xiao Juan running away is a bad omen, and only blood relatives can be stake brides to ward off bad luck. You don't want a son. I want to have a grandson. My mom's decision was firm, and without hesitation. Of course, I want a son. A daughter is born to serve the son from birth. I understand that. My legs couldn't stop trembling, and fear gripped me. However, at that moment, the door opened. "Yanyan, why are you here?" They both seemed surprised to see me standing there. They smiled warmly, just as usual. My jaw trembled uncontrollably, and intense fear kept me frozen. "What are you doing here, Yanyan?" But at that moment, my sister-in-law's voice came from behind. "Yanyan, why are you still here? Didn't you say your stomach hurts, and you need to go to the bathroom?" I looked at my sister-in-law, puzzled. She whispered, "No matter what you heard, act like nothing happened." We walked toward the backyard, and as we reached the latrine, I gradually calmed down. I told her everything I knew, fearing for Xiao Wan's safety. "No matter what you heard, if you want to live, pretend you know nothing." I decided to go find my mom immediately, and have her tell Sun Grandpa to rescue Xiao Juan. But just as I reached the front door, my mom and brother returned. I could hear their voices getting closer. My brother said, "Do you really want Yanyan to be a stake bride? Mom, can you bear that? After raising her for so many years, it's time for her to contribute to the family." Didn't you hear what Rongpo said? Xiao Juan running away is a bad omen, and only blood relatives can be stake brides to ward off bad luck. You don't want a son. I want to have a grandson. My mom's decision was firm and without hesitation. Of course, I want a son. A daughter is born to serve the son from birth. I understand that. My legs couldn't stop trembling, and fear gripped me. However, at that moment, the door opened. "Yanyan, why are you here?" They both seemed surprised to see me standing there. They smiled warmly, just as usual. My jaw trembled uncontrollably, and intense fear kept me frozen. "What are you doing here, Yanyan?" But at that moment, my sister-in-law's voice came from behind. "Yanyan, why are you still here? Didn't you say your stomach hurts, and you need to go to the bathroom?" I looked at my sister-in-law, puzzled. She whispered, "No matter what you heard, act like nothing happened." We walked toward the backyard, and as we reached the latrine, I gradually calmed down. I told her everything I knew, fearing for Xiao Wan's safety. She was shocked and couldn't recover for a while. "Sister-in-law, now my mom and brother are targeting me. I must find a chance to escape, and I advise you to run away as well." I held onto her hand tightly, hoping she would believe me. She nodded and shook her head. "No, I can't. If I run away, what will happen to Xiaoping? She's still being raised in Rongpa's house." Xiaoping was the name my sister-in-law gave to her daughter. "It's impossible. Your brother and your mom are so good. How could they do such a heartless thing? Could it be that you misunderstood?" My sister-in-law suddenly doubted. I understood her feelings, even I didn't believe it at first. "Sister-in-law, do you know something? Otherwise, why did you help me just now?" She hesitated to speak. "Anyway, I have to find a way to get Xiaoping back. Don't think too much about it. What if there's a misunderstanding? It won't be good for mom." I carefully considered her words. Indeed, my mom hadn't said she wanted to kill me, but I still felt that something was off. At this moment, my mom's voice came from outside. "Yanyan, are you okay? Mom made julub and ginger tea for you. Your sister-in-law is still recovering. Don't bother her too much." Our conversation had to stop as we both returned to the room one after another. Inside, my mom and brother were smiling happily. She pulled me in front of her, patting my back, and saying, "Yanyan, you wanted to be a stake bride, right? Mom has good news for you," Rongpo said. "As an exception, you can be a stake bride." The situation unfolded as I expected. I held back my emotions and asked, "Mom, didn't Rongpo say I couldn't be chosen because of my weak blood and energy?" My mom explained that due to the incident in the bridal chamber last time, Rongpo made an exception and calculated my birth date, saying it would bring me good luck. She explained it convincingly, and I couldn't see any suspicion on her face. My brother chimed in, patting my forehead affectionately. "You little glutton, you can't snatch food from your sister-in-law anymore. Rongpo said we should take good care of you, let you build up your blood and energy, so that you can marry well with face." After saying this, he hugged my sister-in-law and kissed her. My mom also lovingly touched my head. We were a happy family, but I felt uneasy. Was this care genuine or fake? Was I just overthinking? My mom kept her word. That night, she cooked red date and longan soup for me, and even prepared a medicinal bath for me to soak in. These were treatments only a stake bride could enjoy, something I had dreamt of before. My mom smiled as she washed my back, speaking gently, "Yanyan, your blessings are yet to come, Mom." Where did Sister Xiao Juan go? I asked cautiously. Oh, your sister Xiao Juan went to the city to enjoy herself. Don't worry, Mom will find you an even better family, better than Xiao Wan's. Mom, I dreamt of sister Xiao Juan that day. She's dead. I stared at my mom, hoping to find any signs of guilt, but she laughed as usual, combing my hair and saying, impossible, my silly girl, you just miss her. Tomorrow we'll ask your grandpa son if sister Xiao Juan and Sunday can come back for a visit. Seeing my mom so sure, I felt more convinced that I had misunderstood her. That night, I slept beside her. She thought I had a stomachache, and her rough hands were massaging my belly. I felt a mix of emotions, realizing how wrong I had been, and eventually, I drifted into a deep sleep, but I dreamt again. I dreamt of sister Xiao Juan, her resentful and hollow eyes staring at me. Like a ghost, she floated towards me, grabbing my throat, and accusing me of not believing her. I was scared awake, gasping for air. Cold sweat soaked my pillow, turning my head. I saw a pair of eyes staring at me, in the darkness, terrified. I jumped up from the bed, looking closely. It was my mom, who hadn't slept. Mom, you scared me. Dreaming a nightmare. Go back to sleep. My mom, back to her usual kind self, smoothed my hair and pulled me back to sleep. But I couldn't sleep anymore. I pretended to close my eyes, and after some time, I heard my mom's steady breathing. Stealthily, I got up and left home, heading to the bridal chamber on the edge of the village. Staring at the red soil, I recited a few words of apology, then picked up a shovel and started digging. The silver moonlight cast a chilling atmosphere over the bridal chamber. In the dead of night, my hair stood on end, but I dared not stop. As I dug deeper, the herbal fragrance that used to emanate from the red soil gradually disappeared, replaced by a faint stench. With one more shovelful, I felt something blocking my way. Holding my breath, I uncovered the red soil, revealing a round, decomposing human head. I was scared and sat down, watching a procession of stake brides I had seen since childhood flash before my eyes. Their beautiful faces in stark contrast to this decaying corpse. I bowed 3 times to the body, intending to restore everything. Behind me, I heard footsteps from the woods. Quickly, Big Yellow emerged from the grass, grabbing my pants and pulling in the opposite direction. I knew it wouldn't do this without reason. Someone was coming. I hurriedly followed it. Unfortunately, before I could run far, Uncle Sun intercepted me. Damn it, trying to run. My mom, panting, caught up. In the moonlight, her face showed no signs of affection. Tie her up, and bring her back. Almost had a big problem. Yanyan, don't blame mom for being ruthless. Behind my mom, my brother and several strong men followed. The usually kind uncles and elders now looked eerie and terrifying. I was tied up and locked in the house. Uncle Sun warned my mom to watch me closely before leaving with the others. Huddled in the corner, tears and mucus streaming down, I cried, "You're not my mom. My mom would never do this to me. What you're doing is a crime. You're a murderer." My mom, with a sinister smile, held a bowl of red date and longan soup, pinching my chin to force it down, saying, "Good girl, mom gave you life, so I have the right to let you die. You better take good care of your health, help your brother have a chubby son, or else, it won't go well for you." She held me tightly, and I struggled, knocking the bowl to the ground. Enraged, she slapped me. "Let me tell you, your life is given by me, and if I want you to die, it's only natural. You better obediently take care of your health, so that you can marry well, otherwise, there won't be good fruits for you." I stared at the mother who had cared for me for so many years with despair and hatred as she left the room. The taste of red date and longan gruel lingered in my mouth, but it was no longer sweet, due to my non-cooperation. The next day, my mom insisted on taking me to Rongpa's house, claiming that Rongpo must have a way to nourish my body. As soon as I was brought out of the house by my mom, I bumped into my sister-in-law. She seemed unaware of what had happened last night, and she found it strange that my mom was pushing me around with my mouth covered. Yanyan seemed to be possessed yesterday, and taking her to Rongpa's to see if there's anything that can help. Wrong. Take care at home, and mom will cook something delicious for you when she comes back, my mom explained to my sister-in-law with a cheerful smile. Forced to leave home, I cast a pleading look at my sister-in-law. Before departing, at Rongpa's house, my mom promptly tied me to a stool. Rongpo was busy scrubbing a funnel and didn't even raise her eyelids. Rongpo, she's not eating or drinking now. When it's time for the stake bride ceremony, she won't be able to release blood. What should I do for my grandson? My mom was impatient. Rongpo told her to relax and removed the cloth stuffed in my mouth. Before I could utter a word of protest, Rongpo and my mom acted in perfect sync. One held down my head, and the other forcefully inserted a tube into my throat, securing the other end to the funnel. As a foreign object invaded, I instinctively retched, the taste of blood rushing up. However, being tightly bound, I could only endure the agony, struggling on the stool. Rongpo, you're truly capable," my mom praised repeatedly, her eyes filled with admiration. She grabbed a large bowl of thick, gooey substance resembling pig feed, and poured it into the funnel in my mouth, resembling force-feeding a duck feeder. Mechanically, she poured the feed into my stomach. Tears silently flowed down my face as I watched her malevolent expression. At this moment, Rongpo returned to the stool and calmly cleaned something. My vision was already blurred with tears, but I could see it was a mass of blurred flesh and blood, like infant organs. The discarded red belly band on the ground belonged to Xiaobing, and I recognized it. My heart trembled again. She chopped and mashed the thing into pieces and threw it into the big bucket she used earlier, realizing that the feed was the same one my mom had filled before. I felt my stomach turn violently. Xiaoping. My Xiaoping. My sister-in-law suddenly rushed out. I didn't know when she had arrived at Rongpo's house, and now she was holding scissors, charging frantically towards Rongpo. Startled, Rongpo clumsily overturned the bucket and rushed towards my mom. My mom, ignoring me, reported Rongpo as they stumbled backward, seizing the opportunity. I took out the broken glass I had hidden, rubbing it fiercely against the hemp rope behind me. Rong, listen to mom. Don't be impulsive, that's not Xiaoping. Xiaoping is fine. My mom stammered with admiration in her eyes. From the side, she grabbed a large bowl of the same feed, and started pouring it into my mouth through the funnel. Give it to me. She mechanically poured the feed into my stomach. Watching her cruel face, my tears flowed silently. At this moment, my sister-in-law rushed forward, and pushed me out of the way. Throwing the bucket towards Rongpo and my mom, they fell to the ground, disheveled. Seizing the opportunity, my sister-in-law grabbed onto Grandpa Sun's legs, shouting, "You killed Xiaoping. I'll fight you to the death. Yanyan, you're still young, run." Sister-in-law, I cried as I looked back at her. Run? Seeing the two of them climbing up, I made a ruthless decision and rushed towards the door. Sister-in-law, I'll come back to save you. I picked up some offerings and fruits at the village entrance, preparing to go find Sister Xiao Juan first. When I stumbled through several mountains and arrived at the cave, I found Sister Xiao Juan lying peacefully at the entrance, motionless. A sense of foreboding rose in my heart. I quickly walked to her side, gently touching her already stiff and cold body, tremblingly calling out, "Sister Xiao Juan." She would never respond to me. Again, I turned her face, and though her blind eyes couldn't reveal whether they were open or closed, her eyebrows were tightly knit. Perhaps, until the moment she left, she had been extremely uneasy. "Mr. Xiao Juan, it's my fault. I came too late. I shouldn't have doubted you. Wake up, please." Endless regret engulfed me in an instant. The sadness at this moment surpassed the fear and despair from before, piercing my heart. I hugged Sister Xiao Juan, and wept bitterly. Suddenly, the world spun before my eyes. Perhaps I was too weak, and I swayed and fell straight down. In a daze, I seemed to see a black mist rising from her body, but I quickly lost consciousness and collapsed beside her. When I woke up again, I found myself back in the village, this time, to prevent me from escaping. Grandpa's son and my brother were both present. My brother sneered sinisterly. "How is it? Can't survive outside, right? You'll come back eventually. Listen to your brother. I promise to feed you well before you leave. In the future, my son will offer sacrifices to you every year."